Yet when asked about those very issues, you blame an anonymous smear campaign, even when many of these claims are not anonymous. Which is it? Have you overcome personal issues, or are you the target of a smear campaign? It can't be both. It's clear to me that you're not being honest with us or the American people because you know the truth would disqualify you from getting the job. And just as concerning as each of these specific disqualifying accusations are, what concerns me just as much is the idea of having a Secretary of Defense who is not transparent.
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. Pete Hegseth's Senate confirmation hearing has been an absolute disaster for Donald Trump and his Republican enablers in the Senate. I'm going to share with you some highlights, or more accurately, some lowlights, but I need to level set with you first. Hegseth is almost certainly going to be confirmed. Dems just don't have the votes to block it. Now, the Republican caucus is, as we have seen time and again, a wholly owned subsidiary of Trump Incorporated. So these hearings do not fall under the Senate's typical advise and consent tradition. Hegseth already has the votes. What we're in fact seeing is Democrats establishing for posterity a record of just how dangerously unqualified and grossly unprincipled Pete Hegseth is. I wish we were not at this point as a democracy, as a country. But as the saying goes, elections have consequences. Donald Trump will become the president in less than a week. And with the Republican Party in lockstep, many of his deeply unfit nominees will go through. It is the job of Democrats to make that process as difficult as possible, not only to prevent damage whenever possible to the institutions that undergird democracy, but to signal that history is watching, and that even though MAGA extremists may rack up short-term wins, the judgment of history will be severe. Pete Hegseth, as SecDef, will undoubtedly embarrass himself and his party, his president, and unfortunately his country. I only hope that his incompetence does not prove deadly. Either way, these hearings will preserve a record for why we objected to his nomination and why Republicans and Trump cannot be trusted with America's national security. Here are just a few of those lowlights from the confirmation hearing. First up is Senator Tim Kaine reminding us of how Hegseth's unbridled ambition led him to lie to Trump's own transition team about credible reports of sexual assault.
You didn't reveal any of this to President Trump or the transition team as they were considering you to be nominated for Secretary of Defense. You didn't reveal the action. You didn't reveal the criminal complaint. You didn't reveal the criminal investigation. You didn't reveal the settlement. You didn't reveal the cash payment. Why didn't you inform the commander-in-chief and the transition team of this very relevant event?
Senator, I've appreciated every part of the process with the transition team. They have been open and honest with me. We've had great conversations between the two of us, and I appreciate the opportunity that President-elect Trump has given me.
You chose not to reveal this, right? Because you knew it would hurt your chances. So you chose not to reveal this really important thing to the commander-in-chief and the transition team because you were worried about your chances rather than trying to be candid with the future president of the United States.
Even Pete Hegseth's own mother could not defend his abusive treatment of women. She wrote this in an email to her son. I have no respect for any man that belittles, lies, cheats, sleeps around, and uses women for his own power and ego. You are that man and have been for years. And as your mother, it pains me and embarrasses me to say that, but it is the sad, sad truth. Hegseth's disdain for women, however, isn't limited to his exes, his wives, and his other immediate victims. His attitude towards those who serve is degrading. We've covered that here before, but here is Senator Jeanne Shaheen holding him to account.
Also write in your book, The War on Warriors, with the chapter, The Deadly Obsession with Women Warriors, that, quote, not only are women comparatively less effective than men in combat roles, but they are more likely to be objectified by the enemy and their own nation in the moral realms of war. Mr. Hegseth, should we take it to believe that you believe that the two women on this committee who have served honorably and with distinction made our military less effective and less capable?
And then there is Hegseth's total lack of preparation for this role. He aims to lead the Department of Defense, yet lacks the most basic understanding of the international alliances that keep our country safe.
Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact
No, you
amount of
couldn't,
nations
because
in
you've
that,
not
but I
even
know we have
bothered to
allies
do-
in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, trying to work
Okay.
on submarines with them.
Mr.
and data
Hegseth,
transfers
none
with
of those
them.
countries
We
are
have
in
allies
ASEAN.
across.
None of those 3 countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations. Listen.
Finally, there is his blind allegiance to Donald Trump. I understand that every defense secretary must answer to the president, but when that loyalty supersedes one's oath to the Constitution, that is disqualifying. Here, Pete Hegseth cannot bring himself to assert, even in the hypothetical, that he would defend the Constitution against unconstitutional orders from President Trump.
In June of 2020, then President Trump directed former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper to shoot protesters in the legs in downtown D.C., an order Secretary Esper refused to comply with. Would you carry out such an order from President Trump?
Senator, I was in the Washington, D.C. National Guard unit that was in Lafayette Square during those
Would you
events,
carry
holding
out
a
an
riot
order to
shield on
shoot
behalf of my
protesters
country.
in the legs?
I saw 50
as
Secret
directed
Service agents
to
get injured
Secretary
by
Esper?
rioters trying to jump over the fence, set
Again,
the church on fire, and destroy
You know
a
what? That
statue.
sounds to me that you will
Chaos.
comply with such an order. You will shoot protesters in the leg.
Do you agree that there are some orders that can be given by the commander-in-chief that would violate the U.S. Constitution?
Senator, thank you for your service. But I reject the premise that President Trump is going to be giving illegal orders.
No, I'm not saying he will, but do you believe there is such a thing as an illegal order that Joe Biden or any other president, Donald Trump, could give? Is there anything that a commander-in-chief could ask you to do with the uniformed military that would be in violation of the U.S. Constitution?
Senator, anybody of any party
Right.
could give an order that is against the Constitution or against the law.
Right. Okay. So are you saying that you would stand in the breach and push back if you were given an illegal order?
I start by saying I reject the premise that President
I
Trump
understand.
will be giving
You've done your
any
genuflecting
illegal
to him,
orders
but
at all.
This isn't a hypothetical. Okay.
One last comment about these hearings. The Republican senators have offered nothing but a parade of excuses for Hegseth, bad faith arguments about DEI, and platitudes about their respect for the military. But just take a look at the poster they used to drive their point home about competent leadership. They can't even spell military correctly. Are you looking for something simple and delicious to add to your wellness routine? You've got to try Manacora honey. For years, I've been using honey instead of sugar as a sweetener, and let me tell you, nothing beats Manacora. It has a rich flavor and a caramel-like texture that puts all other honey to shame. And it's ethically produced by Manacora's master beekeepers in the remote forests of New Zealand. The bees collect the nectar from the Manuka tea tree, and the end result is a honey packed with bioactives and 3 times more antioxidants and prebiotics than your average honey. Manacora contains powerful nutrients to support immunity and gut health, including a special antibacterial compound called MGO. Those levels are verified with third-party testing. But honestly, the taste alone sells it for me. The nutritional and health benefits are a great bonus, but I'm telling you, nothing compares to the deliciousness of Manacora honey. And now it's easier than ever to try it. Head to manacora.com/Ken to get $25 off the starter kit, which comes with an MGO 850 Plus Manuka honey jar, 5 honey travel sticks, a wooden spoon, and a guidebook. That's manacora.com/Ken for $25 off your starter kit. It's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break here to let you know that we'd love to hear from you. Your comments, suggestions, thoughts about future topics and guests. Email us at info@thekenharbaughshow.com. And make sure to rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and back to the show. I want to end with this clip from my interview with Senator Tammy Duckworth, who outlined why Democrats must stand up to nominees like Hegseth. Even if his confirmation is all but guaranteed, people of good faith are duty-bound to call out the threat posed by people like Pete Hegseth. I cannot imagine anyone less fit for the office of Secretary of Defense, both in terms of the policy he's talked about implementing and just his character, than Pete Hegseth.
And also his lack of experience.
I mean, all right. Yeah, we could run down the list.
Even if you didn't have the sexual assault allegation, would you get a guy who has never run a major organization beyond a platoon, an infantry platoon, to run a department with 3 million personnel and a budget of over $925 billion? That's this year's budget. It's actually upwards of that, but that's this year's budget, proposed budget for the Department of Defense. He's not qualified. Just on experience, he's not qualified to run, let alone all of the sexual assault allegations, his admitting he's paid off somebody who accused him of raping her. So it's dangerous. I mean, plain and simple. This is a serious job, SecDef, and putting someone as dangerously unqualified as Pete Hegseth into that role is something that should scare all of us.
You have led in combat. You were, if I'm not mistaken, an aircraft commander, Black Hawk, right? You were.
I was a co-pilot, but yes, I was the assistant operations officer for my battalion task force.
Can you talk about the effect on morale that having someone in charge like Pete Hegseth would have, especially to those on the front lines who are being asked to risk their lives and have to trust that the orders they're receiving are being made in good faith and being made in the best interests of the country and the people at home they care about? What does it signal to our military if you put someone like Pete Hegseth in charge?
That you don't value their service and you don't value their lives. I mean, you're putting someone who's incompetent to run an agency that actually decides when and where to send America's bravest, greatest national treasure, our men and women who wear the uniform, and tell them, okay, you're going to go and, into a combat zone on behalf of the American people. And you put somebody in charge who is absolutely not qualified to do that. It's an insult to the servicemen and women and their families. And it's also really very dangerous in terms of the messaging that we're sending to our allies around the world who look to us for leadership. And how do we talk to a Sweden that just joined NATO? How do we talk to allies around the world who are going to work with us when this is who they're going to have to work with as the leader of the greatest military on the face of the earth? It is very dangerous indeed.
I cannot believe that the MST issue, military sexual trauma, is not the salient issue when it comes to this nomination because of Hegseth's background. I mean, you talked about his lack of experience, and I mean, we can go into his financial mismanagement of very small organizations, much less what he'll be expected to do at the Department of Defense. But we've got a military that has grappled for a decade plus now with MST, and we're considering a SecDef who has a history of traumatizing women. Surely that has to be coming up in conversation in the halls of Senate.
Whose own mother calls him an abuser of women, right? I think I may be paraphrasing her email that she wrote. It is astonishing. And let me tell you, as a mother of 2 young daughters who I hope one day one of my kids will join the military and maybe one of them will go crazy and become a helicopter pilot, although they're probably smarter than me. So maybe they'll make better choices and fly for the Navy like you did. I flew low and slow. But I don't know that I would be comfortable allowing one of my children to enlist in the military with a SecDef like Hegseth. And, our military is facing a major recruiting challenge right now. And I don't know that, this solves the problem. And so it really is a long-term effect, not just in terms of his nomination and getting him confirmed, but we're talking about, effects that are going to last for years from now if he is confirmed.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is personal for me in that I talk to young people all the time who are thinking about joining the military, and I take great pride, as I know you do, in my service. But yes, it's a different thing altogether if they have to join a military in which not only is Donald Trump commander in chief, but the person managing the day-to-day of the military is a by all accounts, a serial abuser who his own mom, as you said, called him out for, quote, behaving badly. Yes. What can Democrats do? I mean, we're in difficult times now, not just as a country, but as a party, with the incoming president controlling all the levers of power. He's got a captive Supreme Court. He's got the Senate. He's got the House. What can Senate Dems do?
Well, there is a power with the minority, so we can certainly slow things down. But I also think that we have to be very much straightforward in our review, you know, the Senate's advice and consent role. It's why when I talk about Hegseth, I speak in particular to his lack of experience, because I don't want to get into a reality TV show with Donald Trump. That's what he wants. I'm just going to focus on the fact that he's never run an organization bigger than a platoon. And when he has attempted to do that, he was asked to leave by the two veterans organizations because he mismanaged them so badly. I think speaking to those specific things is a way to communicate with the American people that, you know, this is not who you want running these organizations. You want somebody who can actually do the job and do right by our servicemen and women. And so that's one of the things Democrats can do, is really focus on, you know, making sure that everybody is qualified who is confirmed. And then, you know, we are going to be able to slow things down and really make the process, make us go through every step of the process to make sure that we truly see who some of these nominees are.
Well, thank you, Senator. We are lucky to have you there in Washington fighting for all of us. Great to have you on.
Thanks for having me on.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.